Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining. I am here with my newly acquired friend, Michele Dye, who is the chief strategist for Dyenamic Media. And that is DYE, by the way, for those that are interested. Thanks for joining, Michele.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing these days?
I am good. I know a lot of people are adjusting working from home, but I have been doing that for a couple years now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm used to kind of that routine. And I know some people are struggling right now, not being able to be with their coworkers.
Yeah.
My dog makes an excellent coworker, so
Or
she
boss.
keeps me company. Oh yeah, definitely, she is the boss. So,
Yeah.
she lets me know when it's time to play ball or go for a walk or have a treat. So
Mm-hmm.
she's great though.
Not that I'm comparing, but my daughter is also very good at telling me when she's ready for her treats.
I'm
Uh,
sure.
After lunch, after dinner, sometimes the second she wakes up in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're, comfortable at home and you're acclimated and, getting used to everything. And I'm interested in learning a little bit more about your background in marketing, and let's start at the beginning. What was that moment you realized you had to be a marketing professional?
Sure. Well, as corny as it sounds, it really does go back to my high school yearbook editor days. Um,
I was on yearbook. I know what you're
yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
So I had always been a creative type of person, and my parents were very encouraging of that. So growing up, I was taking art classes on Saturdays. My mom was studying photography at the Art Institute, and so I'd
Mm-hmm.
tag along to some of her photo shoots and whatnot. And so I kind of gravitated toward the camera at a very early age.
Okay.
And the experiences I had in high school with yearbook and TV production and newspaper all gave me an opportunity to really explore my photography passion. And then that kind of led into some design work as well. And so that's really what started it for me. And then what really solidified it was a couple of programs I did in high school. I went to summer programs for journalism at the University of Florida. And then I also did one at the University of Maryland. And that just opened my eyes a little bit more to the field and the different opportunities that existed. And so I knew I was definitely going in the right direction. I knew what I wanted to study in college, and I studied magazine journalism. And at the time when I started college at UF, I was thinking, I want to be a creative director of a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And some other things happened along the way, and I ended up working for the athletics department in media relations. And I got hired there to be a designer to help them with game day programs, media guides, all of that good stuff. And then it kind of morphed into, a whole other thing with media relations. And it was a wonderful experience. I got so much out of my working there. I worked there 3 years undergrad and then got hired as one of their full-time interns
Mm-hmm.
after I graduated. And the experiences I had were just priceless. I got a great foundation in my coursework, but what really set me on a good path was, taking that opportunity and making the most of it, working with the athletics departments, the contacts, the experiences, the level of different types of jobs I was exposed to
Yeah.
in there. It solidified it. And I honestly, when I worked in athletics, I thought that I was going to do it forever. And I'd have some mentors tell me, like, Michele, if you keep going at this pace, you're going to get burned out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, I'm not. I love it. Like, I was working 7 days a week. It didn't even really slow down a whole lot in the summer because you were preparing for, your football media guides and, training camp and all of that. And eventually I did get burned out, and I had other opportunities that were offered. One being the director of communications for a college of health and human performance at UF. And I was 23. I was the youngest director on campus. Wow. And, you know, it was an opportunity I couldn't turn down. It was scary leaving my little athletics bubble, even though I was burnt out. And then I was going somewhere and I had to create their whole communication strategy really from the ground up. They didn't, it was a smaller college. It was 3 departments, but it had a healthy enrollment, faculty doing some really great research. And, you know, that all that they really did from a communication perspective was produce an alumni magazine, and it was outsourced. A lot of it was put together as far as the articles go by faculty members. And that was what they did. So I came in there and built a strategy, built an alumni engagement program, events, an ambassador program for students, a mentoring program for students. I did a lot of things. When I left there, they had to create 3 positions to fill mine. So, so I do have this pattern of just kind of, you know, being a go-getter and wanting to do all the things because I love doing all the things. So yeah.
You're a high performance machine.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then it was a great experience. I had a lot of freedom to really be creative in another different way. So I wasn't just designing things, but I was creating strategies and programs that saw, you know, an impact on, you know, our fundraising efforts. You know, something like our college was right next to the football stadium, like literally right next to it. And there were some other colleges on campus that were having tailgate parties. And I just kind of thought, why aren't we doing that? You know? Right. And so I started these alumni tailgate parties and worked with our development director. And alumni that hadn't felt connected to the college in so long, they were connected to the university and the athletics program, but their college where, you know, they spent the bulk of their time studying, they felt connected again. And then they wanted to get involved. And, you know, we had somebody come in that decided to give us $1 million gift. And it was because he was connecting again. And I had my student ambassadors there hosting. It was great. So that's kind of how I really wound up deciding like higher ed was a great fit for me, even after I moved from athletics. And I went on to work in higher ed for 14 years.
Well, that's incredible. You know, just to hear your story and how like you just kept leveling up in that period of time. I mean, you put the work in. Obviously you deserved whatever you got, right?
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you that like there are ways to build your career in higher ed. It's not one of those things where like, okay, I'm in this position and I guess I'll be here forever. Or, you know, if you're ambitious and motivated, you can climb that ladder, so to speak.
Absolutely. I think the big thing is being observant and understanding what the university's strategic goals are. And I think in my past job at University of South Florida, so I had moved to Tampa about 10 years ago and worked there for about 8 years. Because I came from the University of Florida, and people are like, oh, she came from UF. And because UF is just a longer established university than USF. USF was established in the 50s. Yeah. I got pulled into some strategic planning committees, and that was a great experience for me to actually watch and see how that was being formulated. And then it helped me understand what the key priorities were for the university, so that, again, I was hired for a role to create a strategy for a college that wasn't as connected with alumni and kind of even on campus and external audiences. And so understanding what the university's goals were, I could align what I wanted to do. And then when I did think kind of outside the box for something creative, I found the way it fit into, you know, the bigger picture. And then I had a wonderful boss who was also a creative individual. His background was interpersonal communication and organizational communications. And he was very supportive of, my ideas and building upon them, and just kind of set me free to do my thing. And so it was great, but it definitely is very easy, I think, in higher ed to not feel like you're getting professional development opportunities or even having a path to advance. And I know a lot of academic advisors feel like that too, because there's not really necessarily a concrete career trajectory for that. And same with lecturers and adjuncts. Yeah. And so sometimes you have got to create your own magic and find a way to make something happen. And if you hit a wall and can't keep growing where you're at, then you need to look for other external opportunities, and you may need to switch it up and, look for a different job, and just don't settle for, kind of feeling stuck.
Right. And, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I've had a lot of conversations with folks like you and me, higher ed marketers, and, some of them do hit that wall that, like, they do feel stuck, especially if they're really focused on social media efforts, because that is just an ongoing thing that never stops. And it's just a hard thing to do, and to do well, nevertheless. Right. And a lot of the folks that I've spoken to, they value their day job. They do good work there. They put the effort in. But they also, to your point, realize, like, yeah, there may not be a lot of growth in this particular track or channel or whatever. And they decide to start their own side company, side hustle, right? I mean, when I was faculty, I always had a company I was running or starting. I'm on my fourth one now. And, it gives me that validation and that opportunity to do the work that I'm interested in that I don't get to do during the day. And I'm able to get a lot of value out of that. You, I believe, probably chose a similar route with your consultation practice, right? What would your advice be for someone that is ambitious and entrepreneurial, but is also on that higher ed side? How do they channel that energy appropriately?
Sure. So yeah, I think the big thing is to kind of do your research and be observant and find out what are some pain points for people that you have the solution for. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually, in addition to my business that I have right now, I'm getting ready to start another company, and I'm doing the market research for right now.
Okay. And that's great.
I think, one, doing your research, and it can't just be about what you're passionate about. The passion is very important, but if there's not a need for it, or if you don't have a way to turn it into some sort of viable business, you're going to find yourself stuck on a hamster wheel and just mm-hmm. constantly going and going and going and going nowhere. So understanding what those needs are and how you fit into that, and how you can serve others is a big thing you need to figure out before you just kind of jump into something. I think the other thing is to really understand the business side of things. So if you don't have a business background, there's so much information either through books or, free online classes that you need to think about. So, you need to think about trademarks and copywriting, where you may be used to in your job that already has been done for you, right. with your logos and your branding, but you've got to do that yourself. You need to have an attorney to do terms and conditions for, your website or any products that you're going to sell, disclaimers. So those are things that you need to line up, and then get yourself a good accountant, and you need to have everything set up properly. Another thing for me, for my company that I currently have right now, Dyenamic Media, I talked with my accountant. We looked at kind of the volume of work I was doing, the types of clients that I was working with. And he decided, look, you can just set it up as a DBA, so a doing business as. So I have a separate, tax identification number, mostly because my Social Security got nabbed for somebody else's taxes one year. And so I have kind of these extra steps with the IRS to assure that it is me that's actually filing. And then you want to look at, if you're doing a lot of volume or working with a lot of different customers, you need to look at, are my assets protected if somebody sues me for something? You never know what could go wrong or who's going to file a complaint. So you need to look into, well, do I set up as an LLC? Do I set up as an S Corp? Like all those different things. Yep. And there's resources online, usually with your state. They'll have a small business department. You can get a lot of that information, but I encourage people to think about that.
Practically all universities have an SBDC. So
tap into some of those resources.
Yeah,
definitely. Because you just need to think about those things and and then build your website and all of those fun things that marketers already love to do.
Right.
And so for my new project that I'm working on, I'm kind of in that idea research phase, and I'm sketching out things. And I would just encourage the creatives out there that are thinking about doing this. You can go down a rabbit hole with your creative. You're doing it for yourself. You have all these ideas. And so I would encourage you, spend enough time on it that you're happy with it, but don't spend so much time on it to try to get things perfect because you're never going to launch, because you're still going to be working on your stuff 6 months from now. So I've had to have
constantly.
I've had to had this little talk with myself actually last night when I was looking at color palettes, and I'm like, Michele, you can pull together your ideas now, but you've got all these other pieces, you have to work on first. And I just had to reassure myself, what, your brand and your look and feel is going to evolve over time anyway. And especially when you're in that initial phase of testing things out, what you may love and spent so much time on may not resonate with your audience. And so you have to do some other testing too. So, don't end up spending all your time focusing on the creative. And I think as marketers, that's where we can get tripped up, is focusing on what naturally comes to us and what we thrive on doing every day. And we've got to be able to step back and put our kind of CEO hat on and think about some other logistics so that you can actually create something viable that's fulfilling, that's worth your time, because it needs to energize you and not drain you, because you're probably already feeling a little drained from work. I know I did, because as you mentioned before with social media, that's a round the clock thing that you're having to worry about and think about. And if you're constantly in work mode all the time, you're going to have to start carving out some time for you to grow the business or the side hustle or, another dream that you may have, like going back to school. I decided for me, if I was going to really go and get my master's degree, I personally couldn't be working and then get everything out of school that I wanted to get out of.
Right.
So I made the decision. I was in the position to do so. So I wasn't, going into debt or anything, where I could leave my job and take time off to focus on school full time. Because I did an accelerated program, and after going through it, there is no way I would have, got the grades that I did, and grades aren't the most important thing, but I actually got the information and learned it. And I think I could have skated through the program, skimmed the text, not put in, that 100% effort on it, and I wouldn't have gotten as much out of it. I would have to me, that would have felt like for my personal situation, I would have just had a piece of paper.
It's
Like
a
I
paper chase,
really
yeah.
wanted to dig into it because I studied executive leadership, and it was really my first exposure to business classes. As a journalism major in undergrad, I didn't take any business classes. I did everything to avoid any sort of extra math courses, as most journalism students
Right.
can relate to. And it was like, okay, how do I work around, the math requirement? And so I got creative there with some loopholes and ended up taking, extra computer courses, which for me were way more valuable. HTML and CSS and Java, hey, that counted as a math class. So I did it.
Hey, that makes total sense. I mean, when I was teaching, that is pretty much all I taught was web design for graphic designers. And I always told them, I said, this is a design class, but you need to also approach it like it's a math course, because I'm not teaching them formulas, well, in a sense, but I'm mostly teaching them logic.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. So that would just be my advice to, people looking for other ways to kind of grow and expand their opportunities is you got to put your business hat on.
When I started my first company in the later, like around 2007, 2008, one of the things that I didn't even think of, which again goes to show you how much of an amateur I was as a first, you got to start somewhere, but I didn't realize how much time I would be spending on sales and chasing down money and getting contracts completed. So like, I didn't even have time to do my financials necessarily. Like I was always having to do sales because I was in a fortunate enough position where like the second year of the business, I was able to take on interns and some freelancers and employees and such. And they cost so much money. Oh my God, so much money. And that's all I was doing. And it got to a point where it's just like, this is not sustainable. It's just like, it's not good for my soul. Like I didn't mind doing the sales. It wasn't that. It was, I missed the creative. I missed the creating things that really was missing, and it killed all of my enthusiasm.
Yeah, I think that's something really important to consider. For me right now, my clients have just been kind of in my sphere of influence, and people I've known, people that get referred to me.
Yeah.
And so I haven't done as much sales necessarily, but to your point, it's really easy to get so caught up in other things of the business, and it can kind of set you back in other areas. So you really need to be aware. So for me personally, like I found I spent majority of my time doing things for my clients and taking care of what I needed to do for them, taking care of their social media. I mean, if you looked at my social media for my company, it's a hot mess because I don't have the time to devote to it.
Right.
So, which in turn is not good for business if you're trying to get people who don't know you.
Yes.
So trying to find the time to even just take care of your own business stuff has been challenging. And really, honestly, with the social distancing and kind of this lockdown that we've been on, I've only left my house for car rides 4 times since March. I haven't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
And mostly that's just because I have like some high risk health things with my heart that it would be a really bad thing if I got COVID. So with all this extra time of me not, going shopping or to Target or the grocery store, those different types of things, I've really had a lot of time to think about my business, the direction I want to take it in. What are the things that I don't know? And so I've been doing a lot of online classes, like trying to figure out, okay, what are some things I can be more efficient at, but also being intentional with my own business goals. So like right now I'm working on my website. I threw together my website a couple years ago. And like I said, I spend so much other time working on my clients' websites and different things. I hadn't really built mine out. So I've started spending more time doing that. And so I think as people, think about taking on, starting a company or a side hustle, I would just encourage them, when they are thinking about the number of clients they can handle, they need to keep in mind, okay, what are the things that I need to do for my own business too?
Right. What's your capacity?
And when you can get the revenue in that you're getting and you can hire some staff, then as you could probably speak more to this, but then you can be really strategic in what you're hiring people to do. So for me, I basically cried through my accounting class in grad school.
Right.
Had to get a tutor. I ended up with a 97 in the class, which was like a miracle, but it was basically because of my tutor, because he really explained it well for me. But that is something that I don't want to spend my wheels and time doing. And so I have a great accountant, and he doesn't charge me very much to do what I need him to do, because he's a family friend. So that helps even more. But yeah, you have to don't just think about taking care of other people's needs and your clients' needs. While that is important, you have to also remember, kind of the health of your business and the health of yourself personally.
Yeah, I can relate to that 1,000,000%. Which, I remember I was in like maybe the second or third year of my company, and I kept having like recurring nightmares every single night about missing deadlines and stuff like that. I mean, the stress was just eating my brain alive. And it can get, that's one of the downsides of being successful, is if you don't expand your capacity and you hire the right people for the right, challenges, to solve the right challenges, then it's just not healthy whatsoever. Yeah. Right.
And I think too, when you are creating something from the beginning, and if you think in the end, if your end goal is, I really want to work for myself, then you really have to think about, okay, how am I going to scale my business and scale what I'm doing to replace the income that I have now? And then also to have a chance to maybe even grow more than you're making in your current job now. And I would encourage people, as they're building things and brainstorming and think of things, is to diversify your revenue streams. Relying solely on clients to build your business is going to probably at some point burn you out. It may not in the beginning. So right now I don't really feel too burned out. I have a very manageable list. I had certain jobs get postponed because companies aren't going to trade shows. I don't need to design their booth right now, and different things like that. So I would just encourage them to think of, how can they scale what they're doing? Because as your business grows, you're going to have more things that will need your attention, and you're going to have to wear your CEO hat more than your marketing hat. Especially if you get into product selling and, you've got sales tax forms and different things to file throughout the year. So I would just encourage to think about, okay, not just having clients, but what else can you do that maybe will bring in some money for you that isn't going to eat up all of your time like a client will. And so, and there's lots of things. If you're a designer and you're really great at graphics, well, maybe you can start building up some stock imagery, and market it to higher education people. They need stuff all the time, I had when I was working in higher ed, either I designed things myself or I had a little team of interns that I trained, to help make social media graphics. So all of that stuff takes time. And, sometimes even for myself, when I have to pull like a stock image for something, I just kind of like photographer and designer in me dies a little bit because I want to do things myself.
Right.
But sometimes you just gotta do what's efficient. And if there's a solution out there that makes your job a little bit easier, then take advantage of it, and then you can focus on another project.
Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Michele, let's just refocus on one last thing before we depart here. We have, there are students that have graduated or they're seniors now that are looking for internships, or if they've graduated, they're looking for work, and the economy just can't support them right now, right? So in your opinion, what can they do to kickstart their careers when they don't have a lot of options in front of them? What would you recommend to them?
Sure. So there's a few things I would recommend. One, especially if you're, in the design or marketing space, really take this time to work on your resume. You probably have already done it before, but I would take another look and really see how you can make it better than what it is right now. I would encourage you to build an online portfolio if you haven't done so already. If you have done the online portfolio, I would take another look at it. What can you do to make it better? Same thing with LinkedIn. Make sure your LinkedIn page is optimized. Make sure you're sharing your work on LinkedIn. Make sure you're communicating in that space, chiming in, writing, meaningful comments on different articles.
Yeah.
And I would also take this time to, work on any certifications. There are free certifications out there for students. One that I personally love is HubSpot. They have great marketing certifications for inbound, email marketing, social media. And even if students have this experience in those things from previous internships or work they've done in their classes, I encourage them to take this certification because I guarantee you will learn something that you didn't know. And so that when you do start applying for jobs again and you have kind of this gap on your resume, yes, it's the circumstances of the times, but show your, future employer how productive and that you've been and the initiative that you took to learn these new skills, and you're so excited and you want to help them with X, Y, and Z. I think that will be a big thing. And another thing would just be, don't get discouraged. Before I decided earlier this year to just kind of go out on my own full time, I was applying for jobs, and it's completely discouraging because you spend hours and hours on your application and your portfolio, and when you have to retype your whole resume because that's what their system wants, even though you have this beautiful PDF that you spend all this time on. I would just encourage people to not give up. And job hiring, I've been on the hiring side more than I've been on the applying side. And it is just, there's so many factors that go into selecting one person for the job that hundreds or thousands of people have applied for. You never know. It could be somebody internal. It could just be a contact. You just don't know. And so don't get discouraged. The right fit for you is out there. And, I think about jobs that I've applied for where I thought, oh, this would be so perfect. This is exactly what I want. And then you don't ever get an interview and you're just like, well, this is disappointing. But then something else happens down the line a couple of months from now, and you think, man, if I had had that job, this opportunity that I have in front of me right now wouldn't have been here. I wouldn't be getting to do this really cool thing that I'm doing now. So everything works out for a reason. And I know when you're in the thick of searching, it's like, that's the last answer that you want to hear. But it's really true. And when you get to the other side, you're going to be really grateful for where you where you landed and all the lessons that you learn in kind of that season of waiting. So take advantage of it, enjoy the extra time for Netflix and, you know, some of the things that you like to do, but really spend time on learning. And I think even for me going back, so I went back to get my master's degree 15 years after I graduated undergrad. So I had a huge gap, and I had been the you know, college instructor, I'd been the mentor and the teacher. And so being a student again was a little jarring, and
had to relearn how to learn, right?
Yeah, but it reignited kind of my passion for learning and made me realize you really have to be intentional and never stop learning. It's so easy that when you do get back into a job, you're in that job. And for me, my jobs were always really big roles where I felt like I was dog paddling all the time, and just trying to keep my head above water because there was so much on my plate that it limited my amount of time. Like I didn't want to pick up a book when I got home from work and read or watch, you know, a training class. I wanted to sit on my couch with my dog and watch Real Housewives. So I just, now after have been going through school, I mean, probably in the last 2 weeks, you know, I have this idea, I want to build this new thing. And so I've been thinking, okay, what are all the things I don't know? I've probably watched like 15 online free webinars in the last couple of weeks. And I'm just absorbing everything that I possibly can. And I've learned a ton. I've learned a lot about sales and funnels and email marketing and things that weren't necessarily part of my responsibility in my previous jobs in higher ed, but are helping me to even like rethink how I do things in my business. So I think that applies to everyone, even a senior in college, or you just graduated and you probably feel burnt out from school. There's no test with these classes. For the certifications through HubSpot, you have to take a test, but it's not a big deal. You'll be fine. But it's really more for the joy of learning and then taking what you learn and applying it to just help you in your career. And it may even help expose you to something new that expands your job search too.
Yeah.
So never
great.
Stop learning. Like that's the biggest thing that I learned going back to school, is even though I was in higher ed for 14 years and surrounded by all of these amazing, smart people who were learning 24/7, I wasn't as intentional with that. I mean, I taught myself new things as I needed them, but I didn't sit down and think about, okay, what are some things that I want to learn about? And now I've done that, and now I know I'm not going to stop doing that.
Well, I can think of no better note to end it on, other than if folks are interested in reaching out to you to learn more about your experiences in entrepreneurship and higher ed, how can they find you?
Sure. So my website is dyenamicmedia.com. So that's DYE. Which is my last name. And there's a way that you can contact me through the website. Dyenamic Media is also on Instagram and Facebook. Please don't judge my feed. And you can DM me there. And I'm happy to help, guide anybody, or if anybody wants to ask me any questions about some of the online courses that I've done, I'm happy to help anyone.
Sounds good. Thanks, Michele. This was fantastic, and hopefully we can tune in with you again sometime soon.
Absolutely. I have a feeling you might be interested in my new project, so I will keep you posted when we launch. So.
All right. I'll be there.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me.